Good morning and welcome to UK in Focus with me, your host, Reverend Chris Wickland. Hope you're all doing well out there. And UK in Focus is about bringing you the latest news and looking at things through a prophetic lens, for the most part, relevant to things in the United Kingdom. But we also look at things further afield as well that will somehow affect or relate to the United Kingdom. So, hello. Well, today is a sad day, isn't it? As last night, as I'm sure many of you are aware of what happened in Germany, in the city of Magdeburg, where a lone driver drove through at 70 miles an hour, injuring 70 odd people, I believe killing 2 people. And when I heard this when it was breaking yesterday, and I must admit I was pretty angry. I was pretty saddened by this. Just reading some information here. If you're not aware of this, I expect you are. It says at least 2 people, including a young child, have been killed and dozens of others injured after a car was driven into a crowd at a Christmas market in Germany. Police said the suspected driver, a 50-year-old Saudi doctor, has been arrested following the incident in the eastern city of Magdeburg, while the local government confirms 68 people have been injured and 15 seriously. A city spokesman said the initial assessment is that this was a deliberate attack, with all hospitals in the nearby city of Halle preparing for a mass casualty event, according to security officials. Broadcaster MDR said police blocked off the area as there was a suspicion of explosives in the car of the suspect. Officials said the suspect is believed to have moved to Germany in 2006 and had been practicing medicine in Bernburg, about 25 miles south of Magdeburg. Authorities believe he acted alone and used a rental car. Saxony-Anhalt's governor Reinhard Hasselhoff said, as things stand, he's a lone perpetrator, so that as far as we know, there is no further danger to the city. Every human life that has fallen victim to this attack is a terrible tragedy, and one human life too many. What's interesting about this particular attack is there have been a few Christmas markets in Britain that have been cancelled due to the fact that they were potentially terrorist threats or could potentially be attacked by extremists, by religious extremists that would want to pose a threat to Western democratic society, and specifically Christmas markets are often because we celebrate Christmas, which is to do with celebrating the birth of Christ, and it is essentially, I guess, a Christian thing. Well, I mean, we know as Christians and as a secular country that isn't really true. We have Christmas markets. The fact that it's at Christmas time in a aggressively secular society is more coincidental than not. But nevertheless, as far as other people consider this and see this, apparently they see this as a potential attack on Christianity. And we see this a lot in this nation. We're seeing this across the board, seeing this across Europe. I'm hearing about these things and seeing these things more and more. Now, when you get the breaking news, it's pretty clear what's going on and everybody knows. But then within the next 24 hours, the media will calm it down, diet right down. And now today it's looking more like things to do with Elon Musk and the EDF party, which is a right-wing party. And somehow this guy who did this driving is somehow linked to that. And it's always the same, isn't it? It's always the same. It's let's blame the right guys. Let's blame those on the right-hand side. Let's stick it to them. The whole Stockport thing. We had people that were put in prison merely for tweeting or merely for a Facebook post. They were put in prison, and now there's been a big cover-up over what went over at Stockport, and the truth is probably never going to be allowed to come out on that particular incident, even though lots of leading politicians, know exactly what went down there. And to be fair, probably most of the public know what went down there, or at least believe they know what went down there, but we're not allowed to talk about it because there's a gag order on it, etc., etc. Because again, there will be heads that will roll on this. And I don't want to go into that now either. But again, a lot of this comes back to Keir Starmer as well, surprisingly, or more unsurprisingly. And because the liberal left narrative is we can't have this in our narrative, they will dumb it down, they will play it down and do everything they can to make this just gloss over and wash over, and then we'll just move on to the next news story. And it was just a lone guy, just a freak accident, freak incident, and this is just how it is. And then nobody will address the real issue here, is that the fact is that multiculturalism doesn't work. Well, that's not true. It can work if it's done in stages, if it's done slowly, and if the people that are coming into this country want to participate in that. But if they don't, and they want to ghettoize, and they want to stay speaking their own language and not accommodate British values and British culture, or European values and European culture, then we have a problem. We also know that out of 100% of migrants that come into Britain, only 12% of them actually contribute to the GDP of this country. That's gross domestic product. So only 12% are actually contributing anything, because normally, again, the liberal narrative is they're good for our economy, etc., etc. We need these guys, we need these people from this old culture to come in because it's good for our economy. Where there's been many white papers now written on this particular subject by various social scientists around the world, and they've all come to the obvious conclusion that actually multiculturalism is not working, and it's devastating, and it is ravishing countries. It is causing people to become frightened. It's causing ghettoizing of culture. It's not actually causing a homogenization of culture. It's actually doing the opposite. It's causing crime to increase, and all sorts of crimes that I don't really want to go into or talk about. But the fact is, and also another one of the major key points is that it will destroy the economy. Because, as I said, if only 12%, this is in Britain, of migrants that come into this nation contribute to GDP, that means the other 88% are not, and they're taking resources from this country and will actually cause it to go bankrupt eventually. But of course, our government is insistent on an open door policy, just keep bringing them in. I was watching a program, I think it was on GB News the other day, and they had not a presenter, but certainly someone that they'd asked to come in. And he was like, hey guys, you keep going on about all this migration. We've got plenty of room in this country. We've got all the countryside. This country is far from capacity. We have got so much capacity in this country to take so many more. It's not a question of having capacity and taking so many more. It's a question of economic suicide. If we carry on the way we're going, we are going to destroy our economy, and we will destroy the fabric of this society. And the multiculturalism, which is more than just eating different types of cuisine, is not working. Anyway, today's show and coffee has been sponsored to you by Jesus Freak. I've got to say, I'm not surprised by all these things that are going on, and I'm deeply saddened and I'm deeply angry because, again, we're going to get politicians are going to stick head in the sand and pretend that this is not an issue and this has got nothing to do with migration and this is just a lone incident, etc. The fact that the terrorist police are stopping things from happening on the general public, which you and I don't know about, every single day, which just shows things are a lot worse out there, and there are records that people have wanted to have access to that have been denied to the public because it will show just how bad it is out there on the streets of Britain with migration issues, whether it's grooming gangs, whether it's drug gangs. It is really, really bad out there. And this project, which Tony Blair has been running now for the last 25 years, is not working. Over the last 25 years, this culture of Great Britain, for example, the country, sorry, not the culture, but the nation of Great Britain has basically been declining numerically, but yet somehow we have increased in population by 10 million. That comes from pure migration over the last 25 years, and that's a conservative figure at best. So that's what happened last night. I know that, as I said earlier, certain Christmas markets have been already in this country. I think a couple have already been, they've stopped them purely for the fact that it could cause a potential threat. And so basically we have to put our culture on hold, and we have to acquiesce to the other cultures just so that they don't get offended and want to blow people up or kill people or drive cars through people or whatever else it is that they particularly want to do. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of getting fed up with it. And I know a lot of people are getting fed up with it. And I can't really see this going on for another 10 years. You know, countries generally put up with a lot. We're very patient. I know Britons are very patient people. But this keeps going on and on and on. I just don't know where this is going to go. And I don't think it's going to be good. Now, as some of you know, I over the years have had a lot of visions and dreams about things, and many of these visions and dreams are coming to pass, have come to pass, and I guess will come to pass. But one of the series of visions and dreams I had a long time ago, probably about 25 years ago, was that there would be in this nation an Islamic uprising. And it was bad and it was very scary. I can't remember quite what happened, but I remember in one of the dreams, America did something, and it really annoyed the Muslims. It was something international and it really upset the Muslims. And then basically, we had an Islamic uprising in this nation. And it was a very frightening season and a very frightening time. At the time of that dream, 25 years ago, that wasn't really a problem. You know, that couldn't have happened in the current climate and culture as it was then. But now it can. We've seen on our streets, haven't we, all the pro-Palestinian marches that we've seen. It could be very easy for an Islamic uprising in this nation if that was to be the case. Well, anyway, let's look at some other news now. Well, actually, yeah. So one other thing that's happened this week as well is that one of the third top bishops in the Church of England this week, in her Christmas speech, talked about the Holy Spirit as being she. Didn't say, you know, like, for example, theologically, the Holy Spirit does seem to have some feminine attributes in that. For example, the spirit of wisdom. The word there, wisdom, in the Greek is a feminine term. And so it's I guess, stewing kind of feminine type traits. But the Holy Spirit is masculine because he's always called a he. Okay, so we can't mess about with that. And to call the Holy Spirit anything other than he is blasphemy. And yet, the third highest bishop within the Church of England, in her Christmas address this week, has deemed it wise to call the Holy Spirit she. Could we just, I don't know, do us all a big favor? Could we just get someone into the Church of England who could just become the Archbishop of Canterbury, and that he could hand out to pretty much, I think, all of the bishops their P45? That would be really good, wouldn't it? It'd be great to see all of those bishops sacked, fired, and maybe they could get a job at Aldi's or something, because quite frankly, that's all they're good for. Because if they are undervaluing and destroying Christianity from the top down, they shouldn't be in the job. If they don't like the fact that the Holy Spirit is a he, and according to church creeds that were finalized and written, you know, nearly 2,000 years ago, and that's been the creed and the mantra of Christians for 2,000 years, if these people don't like Okay, there we go. So I seem to have got sound back now. I'm really sorry about that. I don't know how long I've been going on for without any sound there. Oh dear. Okay, anyway, maybe that was a God instance, so I don't get into trouble for things that I just said. Maybe, I don't know. So I apologize about that. I don't know what happened there, but for some reason my sounds just disappeared. I've got a sound module unit here, and it must have just literally just switched itself off for some reason. Anyway, so let's look at other news now. So we've had rising prices, as you may know, that inflation is going up this week, or has gone up this week. Now, what is annoying about this is that we are not being told the truth about this. There is a reason why inflation is going up, and obviously they're always blaming energy and always blaming food, etc. But actually, the CPI index, there's different types of CPI index. I think it's the CPI 7 index, tells you where these the truth of what is going on, rather, and it's the price of houses that's causing inflation to go up. Now, when I say houses, I mean everything to do with houses, whether it's like rental, um, whether it's to do with mortgages, all that kind of stuff. So at the moment, we're seeing increases in prices passed on to consumers for people who rent their house. So people that have house property and they rent them out to the general public, they're having to up their prices because of the mortgage prices that have gone up. Also, people who are not homeowners in the sense that have a mortgage, their monthly repayments are also going up. It's this inflation. This is the single biggest number that's pushing this through. This is the biggest single issue or denominator that's pushing up inflation. Inflation is not going. It is going up because of house prices. Why is this bad? Because you see, this is what the media don't want to tell you, because there is a coming house crash. There is coming a property crash. You see, the price of people's mortgages have gone up so much over the last several months that people are now starting to struggle to pay and to keep up those repayments. So, for example, even only a couple of years ago, your average mortgage was around about 2% interest, but now it's jumped up to 5.5 and between 5 and 6%. Or if you were lucky, you managed to get a 4.8% mortgage interest rate mortgage. Well, now going from 2% to 5% may not sound like a great deal of money, but if you are a person that had to renew their mortgage, as probably most people did earlier this year, and because the housing market and the CPI index on this particular issue is 6 months out of whack, in other words, it takes 6 months for the facts and figures to come into the data. So basically, some time ago, probably at the second quarter of this year, a lot of people had to remortgage their houses. And as they remortgaged their houses, they went up from a 2% mortgage, suddenly shot up to between 4 and 6%. Now, that might not sound like a lot of money or a lot of big interest jump to some people, but the difference that makes to your monthly repayments is that can send up your repayments by 1/3, or even to some extent, some circumstances, up to half. So if you were paying, I don't know, let's give you a ballpark figure of say £500 a month on your mortgage, all of a sudden your mortgage has now jumped from 500 to maybe between 800 and £1,000 a month. That's a lot of money. Now, people who have got bigger mortgages, that's doubled. That's a lot of money. And suddenly, people having a lot more, having to try and find a lot more money to keep coming in each month, and they're having a lot less money to play with. And this has been the defining point that's causing inflation to go up. The media always come out with the same old top headline figures, but that's not the real CPI true index. This true CPI index, where the inflation is going on, is one that's not actually given to the mainstream media. It's one that the stock markets use, and you can see more accurately what's going on. And it's housing data that's pushing inflation up, which means there is a problem, which means that mortgages are, or the payments on rent and the payments on people's mortgages is increasing, which means people are already beginning to struggle, which means that people on mortgages may soon to start defaulting on loans. Already this is coming through the pipeline. But again, the mainstream media do not want to talk about it. Why? because a housing crash is the last thing that we want. But a housing crash, according to some people that know what they're talking about, is definitely on the way. Prophetically, I think, this nation is in trouble. I think God has instituted his punishment to us as a nation, in that we are three key areas, I think, that we're going to see probably chastisement for this nation. One is on our economy, the second one's on our government, and the third one is on, unfortunately, the institutionalized church. So we are going to see probably a lot of churches fold and close probably over the next 10 years in ways that we just never would have dreamed possible. We're going to see, I think, this government is a form of chastisement to this nation. It's going to bring this nation to its knees. It's going to bring this nation to a place of great misery. And I also believe economically, this nation will also be punished and will go into a very difficult place very soon because of the things that we've allowed to come onto our land. Now, other issues that we have here is that we are basically, according to the Daily Telegraph, we're seeing a return of price inflation, which echoes the 1970s nightmare. Now, I was born in 1972, so I wasn't aware of it, but I do know that it was a major, major shock for a lot of people, caused a lot of misery and a lot of problems. And back in the 70s, we had a thing called stagflation. This is where the economy flatlines, but prices continue to rise. And this is what's happening now. So prices are still going. You see, although inflation only records the speed at which things are getting more expensive, it's not actually a true indicator of how expensive life has become. It's just the speed of which it's becoming expensive. So food prices, for example, are continuing to go up, but slowly, but everything is getting more and more expensive. That isn't necessarily shown in the CPI data. As I said, it's housing that's the sharp rise in housing prices that's pushing that data higher. See, inflation can come right down, even though food prices and energy prices are still coming up, because inflation only records the speed at which things are getting more expensive, not the fact that things are getting more expensive. Okay. Now, inflation is back, according to this news article, and the economy is contracting at the same time, raising the specter of something economists and politicians dread, which is called stagflation. And basically, to have stagnation and inflation is not good. It's like a flatlined economy, but with runaway prices. It's the worst of both worlds, according to Suran Thiru of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, where interest rates are kept high to tackle inflation, and the economy suffers more as a result. And this is certainly a live risk of the UK falling back into stagnation territory. The Consumer Prices Index, the CPI index, rose by 2.6% in November, up from 2.3% growth in October. Britain experienced an extreme version of stagflation, as I said, back in the 1970s. In 74 and 75, the economy in the UK shrank by 2.5% and then 1.5%, while inflation hit 16% and then 24.2%. Now, listen, could you imagine a 16% rise in your interest rates on your mortgage? I mean, I know I spoke to my dad about this, and he said it was awful. Well, I think they had a house in the 80s where something similar to this happened again, where the interest rate just shot up. And even by today's standards, I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't as bad as the 70s. And that was awful. But in the 70s, the house crash, what went on out there back in those days was awful. Lots of people were in a bad way. People committed suicide, all kinds of things. It was a really bad time for this nation. Now, something else I need to mention about mortgages is, you see, because of the 2007 crash, we have been operating at mortgage levels that are subnormal. So having a mortgage rate that's around about 2% is unheard of. You see, mortgage rates should be actually around about 6.5% to 7%. That should be the norm. The abnormal is when it goes up to around about 12 to 17%. But now, because of an all-time low of mortgages being at 2%, people are struggling now that it's jumped up to normal levels, or actually below normal levels of 5%. And if we now hit potentially what's coming, and we go from 7%, we jump to 7% to 14%, it will literally devastate the mortgage market completely, and lots of people will default on their loans, which is what happened in the 70s and what happened in the 80s. And it was a decade in this nation that was racked by strikes, public debt soared, and the Labour government, that's them again, was forced to seek a bailout from the International Monetary Fund in 1976. Now, today they're saying the outlook is not as extreme, and there may not be, but there are a lot of growing similarities. And the UK has again experienced an energy shock and a budget deficit, which is really high. Now, a budget deficit is really, really high. We owe more money in debt now than we have ever done before. It's not good. So typically inflation is fueled by demand, which exceeds what the economy can supply. I'll say it again. So inflation, that's prices going up, is fueled by demand exceeding what the economy can supply. When this happens, central bankers then raise interest rates to reduce the demand and to try and cool down inflation. So we've seen wage prices or wage increases going on over the last couple of years, which obviously people are seeing the fact that life is getting expensive, so they want more wages. But the thing is, if you have more wages, then it means you want to consume even more. But the problem is things are getting out of hand, so they've got to try and raise interest rates to stop the rise of wages and to stop the continuing rise of product. However, inflation is rising not because demand is high, but because the economy's ability to create supply is falling back. In short, the country struggles to make what it needs, and so then prices climb. In other words, when something becomes more rare, it becomes more precious commodity, and therefore, we all know the story, the rarer something is, the more it costs, right? So this inflation increase extinguishes any lingering hopes of an interest rate cut this year, while concerns over mounting inflation risks, including the recent spike in pay growth, means that a February loosening is not a done deal. Also, it looks as inflation will go up. It means mortgage rates will likely have to keep going up. And we have also the possibility that we might go into a recession as well. This is not looking good. So again, like I said, the CPI is giving you a headline figure of saying, oh, it's higher petrol prices and food prices is what's forcing the CPI index up. That actually isn't really that true. Higher petrol prices, when you look at it, is going up and down like a yo-yo. That actually isn't true. I know economists who go through these figures and they break them down and actually say energy prices have come down, technically not gone up. And it's actually the house prices that are what's forcing inflation up. But again, the national media will not tell you this because they get given what we call a kind of like a headline CPI, which buries these facts in the data. That's just a fact. It shouldn't be allowed, but it is. But there we go. Anyway, so here's another story that came out this week as well, which is obviously upsetting a lot of people. Is a criminal immigrant to stay in the UK. ECHR, which is the European Human Rights sort of lawyers group of people, the legal side of the human rights for the European side. They've basically deemed that a heroin kingpin to basically let him stay in the UK in case he gets persecution in Turkey, despite visiting there 8 times for a holiday. So a Turkish crime boss said to be one of Britain's biggest drug dealers will not be deported after judges ruled it would breach his human rights. This is the ECHR. This is Europe again. We did Brexit so we could come out of all this nonsense. But again, we have weak-willed, wishy-washy politicians that don't have the balls, don't have the guts to get us out of this. So this kind of stuff keeps going on. Because you see, the problem with Whitehall and the problem with the ECHR is that it's just full of pro-immigration liberals that do not want to stop and cease this problem. It is a big problem for this nation. And if we don't get out of the ECHR, this is just going to carry on and carry on. And it is grossly wrong. It is grossly obtuse that people who are kingpin drug bosses that are causing people in this nation to even die of drug overdoses, that are causing all kinds of criminal activity, that we're not going to get rid of that guy out of this nation, well, because we don't want to upset him and we don't want to take away his human rights, because if he goes to Turkey, where he's already been 8 times on holiday, he might get persecuted. What is going on around here? I mean, I don't know what goes through these people's brains. Do you? I mean, have they got a brain? I don't know. Chris, you can't say that. That's very rude. Well, apparently they're not using their intelligence. Come on, guys. This is not right. God abhors unjust scales. This is not justice. This is not truth. This is not equity. This is madness. This is insanity. And I tell you, I'm getting so bored and so tired of reading these stories every single day. It's always the same. And it's always the ECHR, always them, every single time. It's all about their human rights. Never mind all the other people's human rights that have jacked up on drugs and now can't get off it, or even died, or the criminality that's gone around and all that web of deceit and crime. Never mind their human rights. As long as we keep this drug kingpin in this country, because ECHR thinks it's good for him to not go back to a country where he might get prosecuted or persecuted, even though he's been there on holiday 8 times. I mean, really. I'm sorry I'm having a bit of a rant today, but this is not good. This is not good. So this case will reignite calls again for the UK to leave or reform the ECHR, but they won't. Why? Because Labour in power. Labour want to get back into bed with Europe again. Labour want to undo the vote to leave Europe. They want to undo that reformation. Now, I personally think that's criminal. You know, the majority of Britain voted they wanted out, and now we have Keir Starmer and his guys trying to get us back in again. Human rights shouldn't be about protecting dangerous criminals. A fundamentally different approach is needed to ensure human rights legislation is not abused by criminals and illegal immigrants. Basically, the bad guys are getting it good, and the good guys are getting it bad. God hates it when we call evil good and good evil. And this is exactly what's going on here. Richard Tice, the deputy leader of Reform UK, said that the UN Refugee Agency have just disgraced themselves. They're defending a violent mafia-style drug overlord, not some genuine refugee, and we must pull out of the ECHR and transform our laws to deport all foreign criminals and illegal overstayers. Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, said, the decision is a sick joke. Our human rights laws have been turned against the British public. And this is what's happened. And so this guy, he entered in the UK in 1988, claimed asylum. He was granted indefinite leave to remain in 1997. However, in 2004, he was jailed for 16 years for a major plot to supply heroin. After his release on parole in 2014, he was charged twice with violent assaults, but was acquitted. During visits to Turkey in 2001 and 2002, he had an affair with a Turkish woman. The Home Office spokesman, remember the Home Office, I'm afraid he's completely liberal and woke, said this is an incredibly disappointing ruling. However, we will not give up on our pursuit of doing all we can to remove Thomas Morgan, dangerous foreign criminals, in order to keep our streets safe. The Home Office, Whitehall, all these guys, they say this, but nothing gets done. It's so sad. Proverbs 11:1 says, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Psalm 82 verses 2-4. How long will you hand down unjust decisions by favoring the wicked? Selah. Have a think about that. Give justice to the poor and the orphan. Uphold the rights of the oppressed and destitute. Rescue the poor and helpless. Deliver them from the grasp of evil people. You see, the greater crime, unfortunately, now in today's hyper-liberal society, is that the greater crime that we can't break here is political correctness. We must bow down to political correctness and allow the human rights of terrible people to stay in this country. Why? Because, well, that's the liberal narrative of the day, and that's imperative. That's empirical. It doesn't matter if a child had to die. It doesn't matter what went down. All it matters is that we make sure we stick to the party political rule, which is these guys can stay because that's our narrative. And we must be politically correct, and we cannot say otherwise. That is what is going on in this nation now, and people are tired of it. And I fear for this nation. I really do. I think in the next 10 years, things are not going to go well. I just know it. Things are not going to go well. Now, Chris, this is a very heavy talk today. Look, the reality is, and I'm not trying to put it down on you, Day. The reality is this is where we're at as a culture. This is where we're at as a society. And you can't be a Christian and just put your head in the sand and pretend this is not your problem, pretend it's just going to go away. You can't be a politician and pretend, well, this is all a bit too complicated for me. I don't want to make the complicated decisions or the nasty decisions that need to be made to try and get this country right again. I'm just going to put my head in a bucket and put it in the sand somewhere. You can't do that anymore. And we literally have church leaders, throughout the nation that just put their head in the sand on this particular issue, or even just go along with the narrative, not realizing what they're doing. You see, Christianity is in crisis in this nation, not just in this nation, but across Europe and probably most of the Western world. We are literally seeing the end of Christendom. Now, in one sense, we're seeing the rise of something new and something fresh, and I believe that is good. But at the same time, it is depressing and it is sad to see the demise of Christianity. It is sad to see so many places, so many churches that just play the politically correct party line on all this stuff. It's so discouraging, and it's awful. It really is just awful. It is such a shame. But God is good, and God will rebuild his church, and the gates of hell will not prevail. I do believe we're coming to the end of the current wineskin of Christianity. It's become too inflexible. It's become too woke, too politically correct. And I think now it's time for it to go where it needs to go, which is in the bin. And I believe that God is going to raise up a new form of Christianity over this next generation. I know a lot of people go, Jesus is coming back next week. Well, if he does, praise God. But nevertheless, Christianity must go on. Now, you can't be one of those pre-tribbers that just, again, puts their head in the sand and waits for Jesus to come and rapture and take them away. If you believe in the rapture theology, that you just wait for Jesus to come and suck you out of here, because the reality is you and I have got work to do. We need to be building church. We need to be planting church. We need to be planting house churches everywhere. And the reason why we have to do house churches is because I think, if I'm honest with you, this migration issue is not going to go away. It's going to get worse and worse. And our country, this nation, is going to become a powder keg, and it is going to explode. And if Trump is now going to become president. And if he does something that like I said, I saw in a dream over 25 years ago, it could cause big trouble on an international scale, which could potentially upset a lot of Muslims, which again could cause an Islamic uprising in this nation. We are in unprecedented, uncharted water. We have not been here since just prior to the Reformation, when Islam was sweeping its way across Europe then and was causing all kinds of problems. We are at very dangerous times in our nation's history now. And again, many pastors don't want to talk about it. They don't want to speak out about it. Many politicians and leaders don't want to talk about it. They don't want to speak out about it. I do want to talk about it, and I do want to speak out about it because I love this nation. I grew up in this nation, born in this nation, and I love it. And it's breaking my heart as a Christian to see what bishops have done to the Church of England, to see what people have done to various denominations, wrecked it, ravaged it from within, moved away from the orthodoxy of 2,000 years of Christian orthodoxy, all for the sake of post-modernity, that we can fit in, that we can be culturally relevant. The church is always at her best when she's countercultural, not being pro-culture. Anyway, let's take a quick break from me ranting and raving, because I'm sure you're bored of that now. Let's have a look at what's been going on across the ponds. Now, what I'm going to show you here is some very, what I would call neutered footage. In other words, I could have shown you some really extreme stuff that will blow your minds, but I'm not. I'm just going to let it just be very generic type footage that you can easily get off the internet. And this is about what's been going on across Britain, been going in Brazil, been going on in Mexico, going on in America, been going on all over the world, which is this whole story of drones. Now, again, I think things like the BBC are not really talking about this. Sky News are not really talking about this, but this is big, that there are drones flying all across America, indeed all parts of the world. And again, I could show you footage that will truly blow your mind. The sky looks like a Christmas tree with all these drones or whatever it is that's up there in the sky. And the government don't want to talk about it. It's a fascinating story. We can only have conjectures and theories as to what's really going on, but it is a story that we need to be aware of. I remember years ago that I believe God gave me this dream, and in this dream, all this kind of weird stuff was going on, and there were all these indicators that something big was going to kick off, but no one really kind of knew what it was. And then in one day, the whole world went upside down, and nothing we could never go back. It was like a paradigm shift. Was it a paradigm or paradigm? I keep getting told off for how I say that. It was a paradigm shift of enormous proportions that sent the world reeling overnight. The whole world just kind of just flipped over. And could this be one of those moments that we're on the cusp of something truly incredible is about to happen in respect maybe to war or respect to something spiritual? Who knows what's going on right now? Only time will tell. But I think it's good to take a look at this footage and make up your own mind.
How is it possible that everyone from the New Jersey governor to the FBI have no idea what these are?
So here's a taste of some of the drones that are flying around New Jersey at the moment. As you can see, the configuration of these lights is very different from aeroplanes and choppers. The FBI admits to not knowing what's happening, as we can see here online, and also New Jersey Congressman reports that 50 drones emerging from the ocean, including a vessel leading 12 to 30 drones. This was filmed in Argentina on December 6th. And this footage is taken from Brazil. Here we can see some drone footage of a guy who's filmed using an infrared camera, and obviously the footage is sped up so you can see them moving around the night sky.
Drones in the state of New Jersey, my home state, is justifiably causing tremendous public concern. These drones are large, they're sophisticated, we don't know for sure who's controlling them, and the FAA's current capabilities cannot even locate them on radar. We have a hole in our monitoring systems, and we have a hole in our radar currently. And the truth is, whether people want to hear it or not, we are vulnerable.
So aware of those drone sightings that have been reported, at this time, we have no evidence that these activities are coming from a foreign entity or the work of an adversary. We're going to continue to monitor what is happening, but you know, at no point were our installations threatened when this activity was occurring.
Can you rule out that these are American drones or U.S. military drones?
These are not U.S. military drones. Again, this is being investigated by local law enforcement. What our initial assessment here is that these are not drones or activities coming from a foreign entity or adversary.
Representative Jeff Van Drew, who is a Republican from New Jersey, was just on the air saying that Iran launched a mothership probably about a month ago that contains these drones, and that mothership is off the coast of the east coast of the United States. Is there any truth to that?
There is not any truth to that. There is no Iranian ship off the coast of the United States, and there's no so-called mothership launching drones towards the United States.
I walked out because it was worthless. It was the biggest amateur hour presentation I've ever seen about anything. Okay, it was ridiculous. There were no answers. Every question that was asked by a member of the state legislature, great questions, no answers. No resolution. They don't know where the drones are coming from. They don't know who's doing it. They don't know why they're doing it, but they say there's no credible threat. It was annoying to be there. I drove 2 hours to be here today, spent an hour in there. I got to drive 2 hours back. The biggest waste of 5 hours in my entire life.
So why do you think they called this meeting?
No idea. Why would you call a meeting to tell people you don't know anything?
Yeah.
I have no idea. And then when the legislators would ask questions, there were no answers. Here's the most frustrating part. The colonel of state police said that he had a helicopter of his flying over above one of these drones, a 6-foot drone or something. I can't remember exactly what he said. And he felt unsafe for his helicopter, so he just let it go. Just let it go. Where'd it go? Who knows?
One is extremely low, it's loud,
It's really cute.
and it's huge.
It's so big. It looks so much closer in person.
Yeah, my camera doesn't do it. Looks like a spaceship, right? Like that doesn't look like a drone, right? That looks like a spaceship.
Patterson Tower, Medflight 8, 1,900 feet, about 7 miles southwest of the field by transition your Delta northeastbound.
Medflight 8 Patterson Tower, use extreme caution for heavy UAS movement on the base. Security forces is handling the situation. Suggest at or above 1,700 AGL.
That we will maintain 2,000 and on our transition for Medflight 8.
And I gotta keep the lights down so that security forces can see.
Okay, something's going on. Something's going on. What is that next to it? A part of me is starting to maybe think like that red drone is someone's drone, like someone here putting it up, like police or something like that. And the one above it is the unidentified drones. I don't know. That's not accurate. I am just saying my theory because that red drone is really low. It's kind of weird.
Tonight, a nation on edge.
What is going on in New Jersey?
That's the question on the minds of Americans.
It was the size of a school bus, literally the size of a 2-car garage.
As a national security threat looms in the skies.
This is a truly bizarre story and series of events. Bottom line is that the FBI is utterly clueless about what is occurring.
Lawmakers fed up with a lack of answers from the federal government.
They're saying no threat to Americans.
They're saying no threat, but how the hell do they know? They don't know anything. They don't know what it is. They don't know where it come from.
I do think it's ridiculous that they're not shooting these things down.
We don't really have control of our U.S. airspace.
And the White House keeping the people in the dark.
Has the federal government ruled out that these are controlled by foreign entities?
Yeah.
And do you know if they're conducting surveillance over
So I cannot make any predictions or comments about that.
We're here in central Jersey. We've been looking for the past hour. I think we've seen about 40 or 50 of these drones. In fact, there's one over my shoulder right there. One after another, these drones appeared in the night sky. If you look real close, they look like fixed-wing aircraft, about 8 to 10 feet wide, colorful, white blinking lights.
That is not a plane.
Definitely not an airplane, but what was it? Hours earlier, I was invited to join the Ocean County Sheriff Department. They launched their own drones to see if they could intercept the mysterious aircraft New Jersey residents have been reporting in recent weeks. The department says these mystery drones evade detection because they don't give off heat like regular drones.
Why do you think that is? We don't know. It's just something that we haven't, it's not something that we've had our hands on. It's not something that we've experienced.
Something they hadn't experienced until now. One of their officers called 911 after seeing 50 of them come off the ocean.
advised after we made contact with that officer that there were 50 that came off the ocean.
50?
50. That was my reaction also. There were 50 that were coming off the ocean.
And this is a sworn officer.
Sworn officer, yes. We contacted state police, we contacted the FBI, we contacted the Coast Guard, at which point the Coast Guard went out with their boat and they reported seeing 13 following their boat. And then the Coast Guard also advised that they went over them about 300 feet and had a wingspan of about 8 feet.
Let me start with you, Mr. Mellon. Do you believe that there are more and that it's understood and explainable?
I believe there are more. I think it's important for people to understand that this has been going on since at least 2017, which is to say these smaller, brightly lit drone-like vehicles violating restricted U.S. military airspace in sensitive areas around nuclear power facilities, nuclear weapons storage facilities. A year ago today, roughly, this was Langley Air Force Base was taken offline by drones. And that continued that was exactly a year ago this month.
So these drones have been appearing all over America now. This is drone footage from different parts of America, including Washington itself.
Can you comment on the drones that are flying around New Jersey ports? It seems like the American people have a big disconnect.
The government knows what is happening. Look, our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense. I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out. Even if they were late, they'd blast it. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people.
So that was President-elect Trump there. And obviously, he knows, I guess he's being president-elect. He must have some sense of idea of what's going on. But some weird stuff is going on. And it's not just in America. It's going on in Britain. It's going on all over the world. And there are some very peculiar and significant things going on in our world right now. There's weird things going on in our politics. There's weird things going on in our skies. There's weird things going on within Christendom. Everything is just, it's almost like it's a lot of things are coming to a head. And maybe we are living indeed on those in the cusp of right at the end of the age and end times. Maybe we are indeed. And maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe it is good that it's time for us, because I know that for Christians, I'd probably put myself in that camp, as in many respects, we're still probably quite half asleep. Even those of us that think we're awake, we're probably still quite, what? As to things that are going on. So, we need to be watching and we need to pray. We need to be aware of the signs of the times. Now, these drone things may turn out to be nothing. There are various theories that, for example, one of the theories is that some warheads have gone missing. And so, these drones, they come out at night so they can detect the radioactive trace. It's easy to see it dark in the night. So they're kind of like, if you like, the drones are sniffing out. It's a good, credible story, except for the fact that these drones have been doing this for a long time and all over the world. They've even been buzzing our own airports. I believe Manchester Airport was shut down for a short period of time while one of these drones came onto the airport. I've seen some of the footage where this large ball thing, just a silver ball, came and landed right in the just off sides of the runway. And as a pilot was taking pictures of it and filmed it, and then it just hovered there and then boom, shot straight up and back into the sky. So there, it's happening everywhere. So it doesn't look to me like necessarily that might be the actual story. We don't really know what's going on. And the truth is, I don't think anybody knows really what's going on anyway. If there's ever a time of misinformation, disinformation, and nobody really knowing what's going on, it is probably now, where there's some, even with what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, no one really, it's like I hear so much different sides of the coin. It's so hard to know what's truth and from what's not truth and from misinformation. It is difficult times in which we're living in these days, but God is good. Now, we could sit here and we could be quite depressed about all this kind of stuff, and as it says in Psalm 22, the opening verse, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from save me from the words of my groaning? We look at the world, we look at Christianity, and it's all in decline, and it's literally falling apart. The Church of England, I don't know how much longer that thing's going to stay going, and whoever is going to be the new archbishop, I can guarantee is going to be as liberal as they come, because it will be the king and Keir Starmer and a panel that will help elect that replacement. And so I'm not holding my breath for that one at all. But it does say in verse 3 of Psalm 22, yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our fathers trusted. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried and were rescued. In you they trusted and were put to shame. I would say that the wineskin of mainstream Christianity is failing everybody now. The days of nice, glamorous TV ministries and all that kind of stuff is all going to be coming to an abrupt end at some stage, as people want something that's genuine, want something authentic, and need something to keep them going through the difficult days that we're coming into. We don't need Christian superstars, glitzy, glamorous Christians with like millions of YouTube followers. We need good, authentic leaders, good, authentic pastors on the ground that are looking after their flock, keeping their flock well-trained, well-grounded in orthodoxy, in the scriptures, and things like that. It's important that we do that. Sometimes it's good to just do the bare basics, right? Everyone's out to like get a name for themselves and try and promote themselves and things like this. But actually, it's good to do raw basics. Our church, I do have a bit of a media sort of following, but I in my own church, I was like, okay, well, I need to make sure these guys are well trained in things of the Bible. And so I've started a Bible school now, which is going down really well. It seems to be going down better online than it does within the church itself, which is a bit of a shame, but there we go. But nevertheless, as a pastor, my job is to train and teach people good orthodoxy, not fads, not the latest gimmicks, not the latest theological trends, not the latest thing that's come out of wherever in Christendom, but good old-fashioned, hardcore theology, so that people really know their doctrine and know their Bible. Because you can't preach good doctrine and good theology all the time from the pulpit, because there's a lot of things that need to be said from the pulpit that's relevant to now as well. And even in that pulpit, even if you were preaching good theology, that's only 52 sermons a year. The people need much more than that. And so that's why we've been doing, I started our online Bible classes and things as well, which is going down well. So anyway, we are fast approaching the end of the show now. That is all the time we've got time for. So I hope you have a good week. God bless you as we approach Christmas. So until next time, God bless you all and have a good week. Bye-bye.